Gamers of the internet, I'm a huge fan of survival horror games. Silent Hill, in particular, is one of my favorite all-time series. So naturally, I was unbelievably excited for the release of Silent Hill F. At time of writing, I've played about 5 hours of this game, and my early thoughts are very well set in stone. So today, I'm making this short little video about the first few hours. What I like, what I dislike, and everything in between. I guess there might be some early game spoilers here, but nothing too consequential. Before I continue further, if you could please leave a like and a subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Anyway, preamble done, let's visit this foggy little town. The most surprising thing that struck me as I was playing Silent Hill F is just how different it feels to previous entries. I knew this game was doing something very different from the rest of the series, and I was mentally expecting that. But I quickly found out there's a big difference between expecting a game to be a certain way and actually experiencing it being a certain way. Now, I want to be clear, I do not at all think Silent Hill going in a different direction is a bad thing. Especially since it seems like we're going to be getting a whole slew of classic remakes. Doing things differently with new games just seems like a good idea to me. This new direction isn't bad, but it is jarring, and I honestly wasn't expecting that. But what makes Silent Hill F so different from the rest of the series? More specifically from the first 3? Well, the gameplay loop in those games involved you spending some time walking around the town of Silent Hill, fumbling around in the dark like a blind man in a corn maze, until finally locating a major point of interest that would serve as a grand dungeon. The urban environment of that town provided tons of large, unique buildings to walk through. Silent Hill F is mostly the same, but it takes place in a small Japanese village. There is nary a large building in sight. Nothing for the player to get lost in for 3 straight hours, trying to figure out which square-shaped key fits in which decidedly not square-shaped hole. Instead, Silent Hill F's dungeons tend to be on the smaller side, at least with respect to the first dungeon, and it feels a lot more linear. Maybe that changes, but at this point I'm just not sure. Either way, this first dungeon is really solid in my opinion, and the time spent exploring the village before that point was honestly just magical. I love a foggy nature aesthetic, and holy shit, does this game have that in spades. Anything that reminds me of my beloved Pacific Northwest always earns bonus points for me. Seasonal depression isn't just a mental state, it's also my favorite vibe. The scary darkness vibe, on the other hand, is not so much my thing. Every hour or so, you enter these Dark World sections to break up the time spent in the village proper. And honestly, I'm not a super big fan of these. I just kind of feel like they're a series of long, boring hallways with mostly uninteresting environmental puzzles / navigation. I do appreciate that even though every section is dark and ethereal, they all have different secondary aesthetics to prevent them from being too overly boring. Aside from the visuals, the gameplay of Silent Hill F is generally very good. I just love exploring the village. I think it's similar to exploring in the old games, but maybe a little bit more open And it definitely involves more dumpster diving for life-saving bars of chocolate. More than any other game in the series, Silent Hill F has a shit ton of different items to collect. Of course, there's the standard healing items, but there's also a ton of new consumables with effects to help you in combat. But I think I probably can't talk about the items without bringing up a potentially controversial mechanic present here: limited inventory. You only start with 8 slots to carry items. Items of the same kind can stack up, but only to a certain point. Inventory management in general is nothing new to survival horror. It's not even totally new to Silent Hill, but it is certainly a change from the classic norms. What I think might actually be a brand new mechanic for this genre is inventory management without any kind of storage box. Silent Hill F effectively removes hoarding as a mindset. I know some people might not like that, but I honestly think it's a very good and very clever decision. Gamers have a debilitating allergy to actually using the tools a game gives them. Silent Hill F's design kinda forces you to engage with the items, instead of just collecting them and shoving them into a bottomless box to never again see the light of day. But if you can't use all your items, you can still make use of them in other ways. At any save point, you can trade in your consumables for a resource called Faith, that you can then spend on character upgrades. Trading in items in this way is really what replaces the item box mechanic. But again, instead of your items collecting dust until the end of time, they become something new that will benefit the player. I cannot overstate how good of an idea this is for me. The devs are out here saving players from themselves, and I commend the initiative. And you're really going to want to make sure your character is as upgraded as possible, because enemies in this game got some fucking hands, and fighting them is a real challenge sometimes. I really like the combat. Unlike America, Japan isn't plagued by a problematic Second Amendment, so there is no ranged combat in this game. Instead, everything is focused around melee, and it's pretty darn deep with a lot of overlaying mechanics. You have light attacks, heavy attacks, dodges, and a crazy variety of abilities, all tying into a new sanity mechanic. I think the best way to think about sanity is like a mana bar for your special moves. Everything stems from using the focus mechanic, which you do by holding left trigger. While focusing, enemy attacks are easier to counter, and if you focus for long enough, you get the ability to spend some sanity to unleash a real fuck you level power move and separate the enemy's soul from their body. The catch is, if you take damage while focusing, you will lose a portion of your sanity without receiving any benefit. This is the kind of risk-reward gameplay I love to see in survival horror games. With that said, it is a little weird for such a deep combat system like this to be in a survival horror game in the first place. As much as I love it, it actually feels a little overcooked here. The combat reminds me a lot of Onimusha. If you've never played that game, it's kind of a midway point between Resident Evil and like Devil May Cry or some other third-person action combat game. It's combat that's just kind of out of place in Silent Hill, no matter how much fun it is. However, one aspect of this game that feels like Silent Hill through and through are the puzzles. Silent Hill is known for having puzzles that are nigh unsolvable without a master's degree in, like, poetry or some other stupidly obscure field. But I actually like that. I think it's fun to force transcendence inside of your brain until your ears and eyes start bleeding. So naturally, when given the choice, I picked the Lost in Fog puzzle difficulty because I'm such a pro gamer. Unfortunately, this ended up being the worst mistake of my entire life. Even worse than spending 4 years getting a bachelor's degree in art. The puzzle difficulty on Lost in Fog is fucking diabolical. I haven't been able to solve a single puzzle without extra help yet. I think part of that is because I'm missing some cultural context due to growing up surrounded by people paler than mayonnaise. But even then, a lot of these puzzles still feel like you need to think so far outside the box, you're in a completely different zip code. Maybe this is just a skill issue, but this is the first time I've ever played a survival horror game where solving the puzzles actually felt genuinely impossible. If you want to play this game but haven't started it yet, please do yourself a favor and just pick the hard puzzle difficulty, and not the psychic damage difficulty. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the English voice acting, as that's the language I'm playing in. I actually think the voice acting is really fucking good. But, with that said, all of the facial animations are obviously matching the Japanese voices, which makes for a little bit of an uncanny and unfortunate loss of emotions when watching the cutscenes. Things just don't match up perfectly, even though the voices are really good. The faces sometimes feel wrong for the words being spoken. But I still like the English voices a lot, so I'll just stick with it and take that small hit to facial timing. And with that, I think that's pretty much all of my early impressions on this game. I like it a ton so far. It's a great game from what time I've put in. But of course, the shadows of the older games hang over this one like a freshly used gallows. It is jarring how different Silent Hill F is from its contemporaries. Not to say that's exclusively a bad thing, but holy shit, it certainly is a thing you will be very aware of while playing. As of this moment, I highly recommend Silent Hill F to any survival horror fans. Will you like it as much as the Silent Hill 2 remake? Probably not, but who really knows? And actually, if you want to hear my thoughts on that game, you can go ahead and click on a video I made for it at the end card here. But if you aren't interested, that's fine too. I just want to thank you a ton for watching this video all the way to the end. And I would extra thank you if you could leave a like or a subscribe on this video. Anyway, that's enough talking by me. Please remember to stay positive and have a wonderful day, everyone.